I want to talk about Solarpunk and say something the Solarpunk community may not be ready to hear. Ancestors, why are you having me break people's hearts like this? Hi, I'm Isabella. I teach women how to move money like a matriarch and create economies that make the patriarchy obsolete. First, for the uninitiated, Solarpunk is a vision for a post-capitalist, eco-futurist movement organized around ecological regeneration, community gardens, mutual aid, and technology in service of life rather than extraction. I absolutely love that shit. However, people are talking about it like it's automatically matriarchal, and it isn't. Here's why. Solarpunk is primarily an aesthetic and a vision. And vision without legal and financial structure is a mood board. A Solarpunk community that doesn't explicitly address land ownership, governance, and capitalization will replicate the same hierarchies it's trying to replace, just with much better lighting and more plants. Here's what actually makes something matriarchal. Who legally owns the land? A community built on land owned by a single charismatic founder is a benevolent landlord situation, not a matriarchal structure. Concentrated ownership means concentrated power. A community land trust, a purpose trust, a cooperative, these are the legal forms that make land genuinely communal. Then there's how decisions are made. Consensus as a value is not the same as consensus as a governance structure. Like, who has formal decision-making authority? How are conflicts resolved? What happens when a founding member needs to leave? Values are not governance. Governance is governance. Thirdly is how it's funded and by whom. A community funded primarily by one wealthy member is dependent on that member's continued goodwill. When that wavers, a community doesn't have legal protection. Collective capitalization through cooperative equity, through indexed universal life funded community trust, distributes both the funding and the power that funding carries. Finally, and this is friggin' important, is whether it explicitly addresses class, race, and gender dynamics. The most common failure of values-aligned communities is assuming that shared values dissolve structural inequality, and that's not the case. The Solarpunk community and any community that doesn't name whose labor is invisible, who can afford to join, and who feels safe enough to stay will replicate those dynamics regardless of how regenerative the food forest is. Solarpunk has one of the most compelling visions of what comes after extraction. Modernized matriarchal economic structures have the legal and financial architecture that make the vision structurally sound.